Because you start out loving each other, and then like 2 years later, you're just building a case against one another for a hypothetical court date that may or may not ever happen.
Welcome to Powered by Ancestry. I'm your guide and host, Kwesi Kunadu. On this episode, our focus will be divorce and ancestry. Yes, I said it, the D word. For those of you that have been married or looking to be married, pay attention. You might learn something that may be useful and usable for you and your partner. Divorce and ancestry. As some of you know from previous videos, that I have been married twice and have been divorced twice. Now, I say this with no particular self-congratulations or with any pride. Things happen, sometimes for the better, sometimes for not so better. And I share that with you because to say that I have a little bit of experience in this area. What is the consequence of divorce for your ancestry? That's the essential question here that I want us to tackle. Divorces come for different reasons. They come perhaps because there was inevitability between the married couple. Divorce also comes because of certain kinds of crises or conflict, not simply between the two that are married, but also between the families that are involved. And we have to always remember that no divorce occurs because of one person or one factor. Divorce is commonly reduced to the factors of either cheating, infidelity, financial mismanagement, violence, whether it's abuse of different kinds, so on and so forth. But what I want to focus on is sort of the less common features of divorce, which here I'm referring to the spiritual factors for divorce. When a man or a woman decides to divorce another, by the point of them articulating or saying that they want to move on or they want to be divorced, their spirit have long made that decision before. No real divorce happens in real time in that moment. People usually think about it, and that thinking through is really the tail end of the process of their spiritual divorce. What do we mean by that? When we get married, knowingly or not, the union has its own spirit, has its own particular force that guides it, right? Think of it as the spirit of the union. And this spirit of the union is what the two individuals and their families have created together. And out of that union may come children, usually children appear. And so those children and that couple form what is called a family. And that family and the spirit of the union, they're one. And being one means that anytime there is talk or decision of divorce, divorce is a ricocheting effect. It affects all these individuals involved. Most importantly, though it's often not discussed, it affects ancestry. You see, divorce is not simply parting ways between two people and who should get custody of the children. Divorce is a rupture in ancestry. If marriage is the fusing of ancestry, divorce is the rupture. But it happens in this way. You see, there are only three basic ways that we human beings join a family: by birth, by adoption, and by marriage. And so when we marry a family. We marry into and enlarge our families. And therefore there's a bond, and that's what I mean by the spirit of the union. There's a spirit that's now representative of those conjoined family members, whether they know it or not, whether they believe it or not, whether they act on it or not. And once divorce comes into the picture, divorcing at the spiritual level is the most important step. And often this is not considered. Yes, people get their lawyers and they arm each other, take their positions and dig in. But that's sort of the clerical part of divorce. Actually, the least important part of divorce is going through the courts. The real divorce that has to happen, if it is time for people to move on, if it is a agreed upon move to proceed separately, that is to dissolve the union, and sometimes there's reasons to dissolve the union that are very appropriate and are necessary. Whichever the case, there has to be a spiritual divorce. And in my experience, having been married and having our families conjoined together, we had a large gourd, family gourd. And this large gourd was decorated with white clay powder called shitty, and of course also cowrie shells and the like. This family gourd sat on a sheep's skin that was cured and manicured and prepared for us. And it would sit close to the center of our living room. And we would have rituals of ceremony, family meetings, as well as other kinds of family-related events around this gourd. In other words, this was our symbolic anchor saying that we're now a family. Why the gourd? Because the gourd has lots of seeds inside. And those seeds represent not only members of the family, but also potential members of the family as children. And those children symbolize our families that have come together, that are joined together, and that are moving now together as one large village. When it came time for divorce, because divorce did come, we had to figure out what to do with the gourd. Because the gourd was not only a symbol, it was the reservoir for the spirit of the union. And so we had to do a certain ritual to dissolve the gourds. I don't want to say destroy, but dissolve the gourds. And to inform the ancestors of both families that the two individuals who were joined together are no longer going to proceed as a whole. And that the ancestors should allow them to move on with their lives without any troubles, issues, and that they find what they're looking for with their future partners. That's the spiritual divorce. There has to be a spiritual divorce before the clerical or other kinds of divorce, or else what happens? It means trouble in the land of ancestry for both sides, both husband and wife. There has to be a spiritual divorce. The same way that you would divorce an individual, there has to be a process, a procedure, a ritual procedure for the spiritual divorce. The gourd is simply one way to do that, because it is quite possible for people to be divorced, especially when they share children or a child in common and still have a working, peaceable, or amicable relationship. And so it is therefore even more necessary when you have children to do this ritual of a spiritual divorce, if there has to be one. And so divorce need not be this angry, bitter, and awful process. And we know the numbers. Almost 60% of the people who get married in this country end up in divorce. But then again, that shouldn't be surprising or shocking. Look around you. Whether on buses, trains, airplanes, or malls, or wherever you go to get what you need in life outside of your home, tell me how many signs or billboards you see indicating, we will keep your family together. We will keep your family whole. We will save your marriage for this amount of money. You see none. Instead, what you see, instant divorce for this amount of money. Quick divorce, this amount of money. So if all of the tunes that are playing on the radio station of life in marriage are about divorce, we shouldn't find that statistic surprising at all. What we need to therefore find unsurprising but necessary is that if it comes down to divorce, there has to be a spiritual one before the clerical and physical one. It is much more important and much more consequential than simply signing a document to say that we are now legally divorced. In other words, that piece of paper is meaningless if severance and moving on has not occurred at the level of ancestry. And there'll be consequences for both individuals, because now there'll be tension between the ancestors of both that have been conjoined and not been disbanded appropriately and ritually, and with the individuals who are representative of those same families. So, what are the takeaways? I'll give you 3. First, divorce must occur at the level of spirit, for the spirit of the union that consolidated those people and the families together. Second, I suggest a family gourd or something like it to represent the spirit of that union and the families and ancestors conjoined. And third, to have a ritual. You may decide your own, or you may consult me or another healer to figure out the ways in which to go about making that transition, that process of divorce, amicable, peaceable, and also without tension and conflict and revenge on either side. There is a way to move on in a healthy, productive manner. But it starts at the level of spirit and ancestry. Not with the legal documents, not with lawyers, not with the courts. I am Kwesi Kunadu. I've been your guide and host for Powered by Ancestry in this episode. Please drop your comments or questions in the comments section or ideas for new other episodes. Pleasure having you for this one. See you next time.